All right, viewers, let's quickly cut across and get you the latest that is coming in from Mumbai, where a monorail was stuck in Mumbai's eastern suburban area due to a technical snag and rainfall. Passengers were stuck inside, still being rescued as I speak using cranes. The Mumbai Monorail service between Chembur and Bhakti Path came to a halt at about 6:15 p.m. Many say it was due to passenger overload. Passengers immediately contacted the BMC helpline number for emergency assistance. The Mumbai Fire Brigade rushed to the scenes and initiated rescue operations with the help of 3 snorkel vehicles. It is a 20-kilometer route from Chembur to Sant Gadaj Maharaj Chowk. Monorail is functional since 2014 and it was constructed to improve public transport in Mumbai. Scenes of panic and chaos were witnessed inside the monorail as there was a power outage and many passengers felt claustrophobic with the air conditioning being switched off and absolutely no lights. The coaches were completely packed to the gills for hours, but what you see on your television screen is a rescue operation. The Deputy Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Mr. Eknath Shinde, joins us on the phone line right now. शिंदे साहब, व्हाट इज द लेटेस्ट? अभी सबसे पहले तो आप ये बताएं कि क्या सारे पैसेंजर्स को रेस्क्यू किया गया है?
ऑलमोस्ट पैसेंजर को रेस्क्यू किया है। अब ये रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन भी लगभग समाप्त हो जाएगा और पहले प्रायोरिटी जो है ये पैसेंजर को रेस्क्यू करना, उनको मेडिकल एड देना और सुरक्षित उनको घर पर पहुंचाना, इसके लिए प्रायोरिटी दी है। इसलिए मैंने खुद म्युनिसिपल कमिश्नर और एमएमआरडी के लोग, उनसे मैंने बात की और पूरी टीम वहां पर रेस्क्यू के लिए वहां पर गई और रेस्क्यू भी वॉर फुटिंग पर हो गया और अभी लोगों को राहत है। ये जो बारिश ज्यादा होने की वजह से, ये हार्बर लाइन बंद होने की वजह से ये लोग सब मोनोरेल में ट्रेवल कर रहे थे और इसके वजह से कैपेसिटी से ज्यादा लोग मोनोरेल से ट्रेवल कर रहे थे, ऐसी जानकारी मुझे हमारे अधिकारियों ने दी और उसके वजह से पावर ब्रेकडाउन हो गया और उसकी वजह से इमरजेंसी ब्रेक भी हो गया, लग गया और इसके वजह से मोनो बंद हो गई। ये ऐसा हादसा दोबारा ना हो इसके लिए कोशिश तो हम लोग करेंगे ही, लेकिन पहली प्रायोरिटी हमने ये लोगों को सुरक्षित बाहर निकालना इसको दे दी है।
शिंदे साहब, तो आप कह रहे हैं कि ये जो हादसा हुआ है इस मेन रीजन है ओवरलोडिंग, तो ना किसी ने चेक किया होगा क्योंकि ये सारी कोचेस भरी हुई थी। इन 3 कोचेस में 150 के ऊपर लोग थे, एटलीस्ट हमें ये बताया गया है अभी तक।
हाँ बिल्कुल, क्या है मेट्रो और मोनो इसका कैपेसिटी अलग है। मेट्रो से 50% से कम मोनो की कैपेसिटी होती है और ओवर क्राउडेड होने की वजह से ये मोनो बंद पड़ी है, ऐसी प्राथमिक जानकारी मुझे मिली है। लेकिन इसकी तो बाद में जो भी जांच होगी सब कुछ होगा, लेकिन हमने पहले प्रायोरिटी दी है कि लोगों को सुरक्षित बाहर निकलना, वो काम जारी है और लगभग समाप्त हो जाएगा और ये हादसा ऐसा फिर ना हो, इसकी पूरी जो भी खामियां हैं उसको दूर करने का काम गवर्नमेंट करेगा।
शिंदे साहब, क्योंकि बारिश बहुत ज़्यादा हो रही है, अगले 2 दिन तक भी हाई अलर्ट है मुंबई सिटी में। पर्टिकुलरली एक ऐसा हादसा आज हुआ है जो कुछ भी हो सकता था, या आप भी मानेंगे कुछ भी हो सकता था। बाकी आप जो कह रहे हैं सही कह रहे हैं, सबको निकाल लिया गया है, ये टॉप प्रायोरिटी रही है सरकार की। पर हमेशा जब महाराष्ट्र मुंबई में बारिश होती है पूरा सिटी डूब जाता है सर। हर मॉनसून यही आपदा लेके आता है, कुछ बदलता नहीं है।
नहीं, क्या है इसमें आपको बताएं कि 6 घंटे में 200 मिलीमीटर बारिश गिरा और 24 घंटे में 350 मिलीमीटर बारिश गिरा, तो बारिश की इंटेंसिटी काफी हाई थी और इसके वजह से कम समय में ज्यादा बारिश होना आजकल के समय में लगातार हो रहा है और इसी की वजह से जो लो लाइन एरिया है उसमें वाटर लॉगिंग हो जाती है। लेकिन बीएमसी वहां पर सभी लगभग 500 से ज्यादा जो पानी ड्रेन आउट करने के लिए पंप लगाए हुए हैं। पंपिंग स्टेशन पूरी तरह एक्टिवेट है और पूरी यंत्रणा जो सिस्टम अलर्ट मोड पर है, सब हमारे अधिकारी जो है फील्ड पर है। और इसके वजह से हम यही चाहते हैं कि कोई जाने माल की नुकसान ना हो, जीवित हानि ना हो, और इसकी चिंता शासन करता है और इसका प्रिकॉशन भी शासन लेता है, प्रायोरिटी भी उसको ही देता है। इसलिए एनडीआरएफ की टीम, रेस्क्यू टीम, डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट की टीम, पुलिस, सब मिलकर एक टीम बनकर आज काम कर रहे थे। मैं कई जगह पर खुद होकर जाकर भी आया, मैंने खुद अपने आंखों से भी ये सिस्टम को देखा है। तो निश्चित रूप से हमारे को ये ज्यादा करके इनको सुरक्षित बाहर निकालना। मैं खुद ये मोनो में एक प्रवीण नाम के पैसेंजर से भी बात की, उसको भी मैंने कहा कि पैनिक मत होइए, पूरी आपके रेस्क्यू के लिए टीम वहां पहुंच रही है, एक दूसरे को सपोर्ट करो, मॉरल सपोर्ट की जरूरत है। और निश्चित रूप से लोगों ने भी संयम रखा है, पेशेंस रखा है, और हम चाहते हैं कि ऐसी घटना दोबारा ना हो, इसके पूरे इंतजाम किए जाएंगे।
शिंदे साहब, एक आखिरी सवाल करूंगी, क्योंकि ये तो एक हादसा हुआ जो मोनो रेल का था, पर बारिश ऐसी पहले भी बहुत बार हुई है मुंबई में, आप खुद जानते हैं सर, और इस बार जो प्रिडिक्शन है अगले 2 दिन का, वो भी काफी ज्यादा है। इस पे एक बड़ा सवाल है कि हर बार ऐसे ही विजुअल्स क्यों आते हैं कि मुंबई डूब गई, कि बच्चे दिख रहे हैं जो मॉल्स के सामने स्विमिंग कर रहे हैं, मोनो रेल्स अटक रही हैं, सारी लाइनें शट हो गई हैं, सारे लो लाइंग एरियाज फ्लडेड हो गए हैं। इसका कुछ तो सोल्यूशन निकलना चाहिए ना सर?
अरे सोल्यूशन देखिए, मैं खुद जब चीफ मिनिस्टर था तब मैं खुद ही जो नाला सफाई हो, डीप जो डीप क्लीन ड्राइव हो, ये नालों की ड्रेजिंग हो, ये इसके बारे में खुद ही मैं जाता था और खुद मॉनिटर भी करता था। और पिछले 2 साल में मैं खुद ही गया था, और हम देखते हैं कि इसको हम, ये जो हमारे सिस्टम है, ये सिस्टम पुरानी है, अभी आबादी भी बढ़ गई है, और सब काफी ये कई कंस्ट्रक्शन भी हुए हैं, ये सब मुंबई में जो है कोस्टल रोड हो गए हैं। अभी यहाँ पर हाई टाइड, लो टाइड, ये भी बात रहती है, और इसीलिए हमने कई जगह पर होल्डिंग पॉन्ड भी बनाए हैं, हमारे एसटीपी सिस्टम भी हमने एक्टिवेट की है, उसके भी काम शुरू है। मुझे लगता है कि आगे एक लॉन्ग टर्म सॉल्यूशन हमें इसके ऊपर काम करना पड़ेगा। और मैंने आज म्युनिसिपल कमिश्नर और उनकी एक्सपर्ट टीम से भी बात की है, क्योंकि पिछले कई सालों से जो सिस्टम आ रही है उसमें भी हमें बढ़ोतरी करने की आवश्यकता है, उसकी कैपेसिटी बढ़ाने की भी आवश्यकता है। ये लॉन्ग टर्म सॉल्यूशन है, लेकिन आज
पर शिंदे साहब
देखेंगे।
एक सवाल मैं आपसे करूंगी, क्योंकि बीएमसी के चुनाव अभी तक नहीं हुए हैं, कोई बीएमसी का जो बॉडी होनी चाहिए वैसे अभी नहीं हुई है, उसका कितना प्रभाव है कि काम ठीक से नहीं हो रहा है क्योंकि चुनाव ही नहीं हो रहे हैं सर?
मैंने देखिए, ये सिस्टम जो है, आज मैं देखा, मैं खुद ही सेटिस्फाइड हूँ कि हर जगह पे बीएमसी के अधिकारी तैनात थे, पूरी टीम हुई थी और टीम तैयार थी, वह रेस्क्यू टीम थी, एनडीआरएफ थी, डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट था, फायर ब्रिगेड था, सब थे। और ये इसमें कोई भी कोताही वो लोग ने बरती नहीं, कोई भी खामियां नहीं रखी, क्योंकि हम लोग चाहते हैं कि किसी की भी जान नहीं जाए और कोई भी तकलीफ में नहीं आए, इसलिए प्रशासन पूरी तरह अलर्ट मोड पर था, बिल्कुल अलर्ट मोड पर था। मैं खुद फील्ड पर गया था, मैं खुद ही ने देखा आंखों से, मैं दूसरे देखने के बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, मैं खुद देखा हूँ। और इसलिए ये सिस्टम जो है उसको और डेवलप करेंगे, ये भी बात मेरी हुई है कमिश्नर के साथ में।
शिंदे साहब, बहुत शुक्रिया कि आप हमसे जुड़े। थैंक यू फॉर जॉइनिंग अस। यू हैव द डेप्यूटी चीफ मिनिस्टर who's promising that it's going to be a different Mumbai next time, next monsoon. Will it be a promise that we've heard way too many times and which actually drains through with the water of the previous monsoon? We'll only know in time. But we continue to get you the latest. Rescue operations are still on where the monorail that has been stuck near Chembur. Joining me from there is my colleague Dipesh. Dipesh, what's the latest that you can tell us? Devesh, go ahead.
Well, Preeti, the rescue operations are still on. You can see four skylifts have been brought in by the Mumbai Fire Brigade, and these are being used to rescue the passengers who are still stuck. And let me tell you, there are still large number of passengers who are still stuck inside this monorail train. This train which lost power due to, as it was heavily crowded, it lost power. It is suspected that it lost power due to overcrowding at around 6:15 p.m. And since then, this train was stuck. The windows are closed, the doors were shut, and many people felt suffocation inside. They felt restless inside. They felt nauseating inside. And after that, around an hour or so after that, when emergency numbers were contacted, the fire brigade rescue officials were sent. They brought in skylifts, and these skylifts, you can see over here, some passengers are now being brought down from the monorail train. These are the passengers. See, the time right now is around 9:15 p.m. and these passengers were stuck since 6:15 p.m. in this monorail train. So it's been around 3 hours that these passengers were stuck inside the monorail train, and this is not happening for the first time. Let me tell you, around 8 to 9 years ago, a similar incident happened where a monorail train was stuck and fire brigade had to be called in to rescue passengers. Similar condition, skylifts were used, cranes were used to rescue the passengers who were stuck. And now, today, there's another reason. Yes, Mumbai has been battered by rains. There's been around 400 mm of rainfall in Mumbai city in the past 36 hours. That is why the harbour line, the central line, the western line, the lifeline of Mumbai, railway trains were affected. Railway trains were not working. Vehicular traffic was affected. People, then the monorails were running. So monorails was an option that people saw, which they could use to commute for the 20-kilometer stretch between Chembur and Bhakti Park, between Chembur and Sant Ghatge Maharaj Chowk. So a large number of people went into the monorail station. They got inside the train, but due to overcrowding, as it is suspected that it could be a reason, the power was lost and people were stuck inside. They are still stuck
Devesh,
inside, still being rescued.
Before we move on, one quick question. Everyone, at least till now, has been evacuated safely? Is anyone hurt?
See, there have been people who have been, we spoke to some of the survivors, and they've complained that they were feeling restless. They were, they were suffocation. Because see, the doors are completely shut. The windows are completely shut. There's no ventilation inside the train. So till the time, the doors were opened by the fire brigade, and there were a large number of people inside. And that is why people felt suffocation inside, and they were breathless. Many of people complained of breathlessness. When they were brought in, their doctors were brought in over here at the spot, who helped them first, who gave them first aid, resuscitated them, and then took them to the ambulance.
Right.
Some of them also have been taken to the hospital. Many of them are normal now. After being rescued, they are normal, but they did complain of restlessness, breathlessness.
All right. Primarily, viewers, that was... Okay, Devesh, appreciate you joining us there. My colleague Devesh Singh reporting from ground. One of the main reasons most passengers felt a sense of claustrophobia because there was a power outage, power shutdown. The air conditioning stopped working in the coaches, and these were packed coaches with over 150 passengers packed in very close proximity, and therefore many of them complained of nausea, breathlessness, primarily due to claustrophobia. Thank you, Devesh, for joining us. But viewers, it doesn't quite limit itself where the monsoon fury in Mumbai is concerned to the visuals that you just saw. Mumbai, India's financial capital, was on its knees on Tuesday. The city's local train services in many sectors were suspended for nearly 7 hours. Schools, colleges were already shut. Many flights diverted. Here are some of the images that will give you a basic picture of what unfolded in India's financial capital. Several cars seen completely submerged in Vasai area of Palghar district near Mumbai. The images on your screen are from Madhubani smart city, which turned into a lake after heavy rainfall. In Thane district, a car got into an underpass after it was flooded. People inside the car can be seen struggling to come out. In fact, one of them climbed on top of the car to ensure his safety. Mumbai's lifeline, the local trains were also delayed after intense rainfall. About 15 inches of water was reported on the railway tracks. This drastically slowed down the speed of maximum city in some sections. The service was cancelled for hours together. These images on your screen are from Kurla, which is located right in the heart of Mumbai. People were seen walking into flooded waters till their waist. Thousands of people taking this route daily to travel to Bandra Kurla complex for work, where Tesla's brand new showroom is also located, viewers. According to the BMC, over 1,600 crore litres of water was pumped in 4 days at various pumping stations. The municipal corporation has deployed 540 lifting pumps to lift rainwater in low-lying areas. More than 300 mm of rain was recorded in the last 24 hours alone. All right, so viewers, the big questions that we're asking this evening: why is Mumbai sinking year after year? We see exactly the same visuals coming in from the maximum city, maximum chaos during maximum monsoon. Is the city badly in need of an infrastructural upgrade? This is a jaded question which will actually go into the cliches of questions when it comes down to in the books of Mumbai in midst of monsoons. How to make Mumbai monsoon proof? Once again, discussed many a times before and back on. Shruti Narayan, Managing Director, Regions and Mayoral Engagement, C40 Cities, joining us in a short while. Sudhir Badami, Civil and Infrastructural Engineer, will be with us as well. Shruti, this is a debate, I would reckon, every monsoon is debated across television channels and in drawing rooms where Mumbai is concerned by the hapless Mumbai citizen who's caught in the melee of this monsoon. Why is the city sinking again, Shruti?
So, Preeti, I think as outlined earlier by even the Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, that, we are seeing a complete departure from predicted averages and what has been, patterns. And now almost all over the world, we are seeing intensity of rainfall becoming shorter and more intense, which obviously is taking a toll on the city infrastructure that wasn't designed for this level of rainfall, right? So I think the reason is that it's very clear. And also, obviously, there is a reason of how quick the city is in responding to some of these things and the ability of the city to kind of absorb the water and put it out. And I think it's important to understand that we need some really quick measures that are, working obviously on responses, like as was highlighted that how the BMC played a very critical role in the emergency response, which is very important, right? But there also needs to be a bit of a systemic planning of the city as it's growing, which accounts for us making sure that we are able to balance the blue-green infrastructure. We are looking at the surface of the city, right? The ability of the city to percolate water and, take it down, but also looking at how we are building new infrastructure and rebuilding the existing one that is falling apart, because this is going to be leading to economic and health losses. And if we calculate that, right, it's actually, we can spend that money in the first case in really, making sure that the city is ready and climate resilient. And I think the time now is that the governance cannot be separate from climate, right? Every rupee that the city spends needs to be looked at from a lens of climate.
Shruti, the sheer fact that today you've had the Chief Minister of Maharashtra announce that Mumbai's current storm water drainage system is capable to handle rainfall just up to 45 mm per hour highlights how outdated the infrastructural system actually is to cope with the exigencies that you just spoke of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because, we are in the midst of a climate breakdown, right? And I think we need to know that. So we around the world are experiencing climate disasters that we haven't planned for or we cannot predict, and the infrastructure, what was it designed for? It's actually completely deviating from what we are seeing today. So that does need a bit of an overhaul in terms of planning for a resilient city that is able to absorb these kind of climate disasters as we are progressing. We need to look at it from two perspectives, right? How we address these disasters and how we are future proofing the city for other things to come, right? So how can we be more proactive in our urban planning, in our, every sectoral aspect that we consider for a city to function and ensuring that we're addressing, the impacts of climate.
Shruti, the sheer fact that Mumbai received 550 of rainfall in just about 75 hours is what we are being told, which I reckon is just about 10 short of what it receives in the entire month of August. Underlines what you're talking about on what we are witnessing world over. But having said that, there are larger questions that need to be asked of the BMC. Is the BMC really equipped to deal with the situation on hand? Not having elections of the BMC, till now, somewhere down the line, has that led to laxity?
So, Preeti, I think the fact that BMC was there and was able to respond to this relatively quickly reflects that the city is ready. And I think we should credit them for that, right? The fact that they have, they immediately responded to the monorail being struck and they were able to mobilize the emergency services in a coordinated fashion to save lives is a very, very important, aspect of the city being ready. And I think, of course, the city could do more, but I think that the response that Mumbai and BMC is sort of, responding with is quite good. And I think they need to look at it. And as, the minister highlighted that there is going to be an effort in strengthening some of these response systems and the ability of BMC to become more future-proof, ready for climate is a critical one.
All right, Shruti, appreciate you taking the time out and joining us. Thank you there. All right,
Thank you,
viewers, we're going to shift focus right now from Maharashtra, Mumbai, to a debate which is going to ensue over the next couple of days. It might have a foregone conclusion where the election is concerned because the numbers seemingly lie with the NDA if something untoward doesn't quite happen. But it's going to be an interesting election altogether. I'm talking about the vice president's election. It's Tamil Nadu versus Telangana in the high-stakes vice presidential race. The NDA fields seasoned politician C.P. Radhakrishnan, while the opposition counters with former Supreme Court Judge B. Sudarshan Reddy. It's not just a battle for the chair. It's numbers, it's a narrative, it's alliances, all on the board.
It is a war of a Telugu face versus a Tamil one in the vice presidential race. But this battle is more than just geography. Even as Prime Minister Modi called for consensus urging the opposition to back NDA's C.P. Radhakrishnan, the India bloc made its move. Fielding Justice Sudarshan Reddy, a former Supreme Court judge, now the face of a political challenge.
The opposition parties have nominated Sri B. Sudarshan Reddy Garu as their joint candidate since he reflects fully and values that saved our country's freedom movement.
India Today broke the news first, and it was later confirmed by Congress chief Mallikarjun Kharge, who called the vice presidential election an ideological battle.
This vice presidential contest is an ideological battle, and all the opposition party agreed on this. That's why we are contesting unitedly.
Justice Reddy, speaking exclusively to India Today, made a bold appeal to all parties, including the NDA, to back him.
India Alliance almost represent more than 60% of the population. Notwithstanding their numbers in both the houses. So I consider myself as a candidate representing more than 60% of India's population.
Sources say the opposition's pick is no confidence. In fact, it is a well thought out gambit. A direct message to Andhra-based NDA allies, TDP, Jan Sena, even YSRCP and BRS. Why? Because the NDA's choice of Radhakrishnan from Tamil Nadu threw the DMK into a dilemma of its own on backing a Tamil face. But TDP remained unswayed, asserting it will back the NDA pick.
In the last 10 years in the NDA government, whichever development has happened, it has happened across the nation. It's not North India, South India, East or West. So that's how we look at it, and that's how we want development to happen. At the same time, representation to also happen.
YSRCP echoed the same sentiment, vowing supporting for the NDA candidate.
After discussing with our senior leaders, our party president has taken a decision. Now, since the election is inevitable, we will be supporting NDA candidate.
The countdown to the vice presidential face-off for September 9th has begun. Bureau Report, India Today.
All right, viewers. While clearly the numbers lie with the NDA, the optics of it will make for an interesting watch. Tomorrow is when the NDA files nomination for their vice presidential candidate. 21st is when the opposition parties will file nominations for their vice presidential candidate. The elections on the 9th of September. All right, with that, let's move on to some international developments which could very well have a direct bearing back home in India. US President Donald Trump met Ukrainian President Zelensky and other European leaders on Monday. The meeting followed Trump's talks with Russian President Putin last week. Trump claimed that Putin has agreed to a face-to-face meeting with Zelensky. Here's more on the meeting that has made global headlines.
The last 7 months, the world has been learning the art of dealing with Donald Trump, the mercurial American president who often brags about his ability to strike deals. The results were there to show on Monday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky turned up wearing a coat, a far cry from his February attire that upset the White House.
Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good.
I said the one that attacked you last time. See, now he said, I remember that.
Yeah, I apologize to you. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
In the same suit. You see, I changed. You are not.
Maybe yours is much better.
Zelensky started by thanking Trump for his peace efforts and the US First Lady for her letter to Vladimir Putin, before handing over a letter from his wife, Olena Zelenska, to Melania Trump.
My wife, she, First Lady of Ukraine, she gave the letter. It's not to you, to your wife.
I want
it. Yeah. So we are saying this sensitive topic, yeah. Yes, please.
After the one-on-one between the two presidents, European leaders, themselves wary of the impression Putin has had on Trump, trooped in, showing solidarity with Ukraine. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz insisted on a ceasefire, a sore point with Trump, who is now of the view that peace talks can happen while the war is on. The other leaders, however, stepped in to salvage the situation. They sought security guarantees. While Trump has offered US help, he hasn't specified anything.
I think that the European nations are going to take a lot of the burden. We're going to help them, and we're going to make it very secure. We also need to discuss the possible exchanges of territory, taking into consideration the current line of contact. That means the war zone, the war lines that are pretty obvious, very sad actually to look at them.
In the middle of the negotiations, Trump updated Putin on the developments over a phone call. After the White House talks, in a social media post, Trump announced arrangements have begun for a meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky. This would be followed by a trilateral that would include the US president.
We don't have any date. We just confirmed
after this productive meeting with the President and then with all our colleagues, with the partners, we confirm that we are ready for a trilateral meeting. And if Russia proposed to President of the United States bilateral, and then we will see the result of bilateral, and then it can be the trilateral. So I said always, so Ukraine will never stop on the way to peace, and we are ready for any kind of formats, but on the level of leaders.
Also on the cards is a defense deal, which would see Ukraine buy American arms worth $90 billion. The big question, however, remains the territorial concessions Ukraine may have to make for lasting peace with Russia. Bureau Report, India Today.
Well, what's the fallout of all that you saw and the implications for back home in India? We're going to try and address that in the next 15 to 20 minutes. But the questions that we're asking, can President Trump bring peace to Ukraine, advantage Putin in the peace talks? Because remember, viewers, you had the President of America go into these talks suggesting very clearly that it was Putin that won the war. Will Ukraine have to cede territory, something that was also clearly indicated? Has war left Europe weakened? I want to cut across to our guest this evening. Peter Taylor, Director, Institute of Development Studies, Brighton, UK, joins us. Meera Shankar, former Indian Ambassador to the United States of America. Raymond Vickery, Senior Associate Chair on India and Emerging Asia Economic Center for Strategic and International Studies, Washington, D.C., US. Well, I'd like to begin this debate with Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor, the sheer fact, even though the Alaska summit didn't quite come to anything in terms of a takeaway, but the back-to-back meetings that we're witnessing right now in the White House with Mr. Zelensky, then you have the European leaders, do we at least see a narrowing in of the conflict and maybe some resolution soon?
Well, thanks for having me on. It's great to see momentum towards achieving peace. I think that's very important, and it's good to see as well leadership from the United States. Of course, that's not surprising given that achieving peace in the Ukraine was one of President Trump's campaign promises. So it's of course proved much harder to achieve than he anticipated, and we're still not there. But it's really important now to keep focus and attention on moving forward, because there is momentum. We could see a very different tone in the meetings yesterday compared to the previous meeting when President Zelensky had that famous encounter in the Oval Office. And I think we saw yesterday a completely different approach, a very coordinated approach, strong support, of course, from the presence of the European Union and this coalition of the willing, which is now 31 countries from the European Union and British Commonwealth countries. And so we can see that level of support and a real push towards achieving peace. But the journey is still on. There's still a lot of detail still to understand about what would be the actual conditions. As you said, issues around land and what kinds of reparations would be involved are still to be debated. But of course, we hope very much, strong public support, both in the UK and across Europe, for a resolution and to see real positive progress towards that.
You know, the next path to it, to any movement ahead, Mr. Taylor, would possibly be with what Mr. Trump's next objective is, to hold not a bilateral but a trilateral. While you've had Zelensky quickly agree to it, Moscow has been very non-committal on it. Would you reckon that is important for any breakthrough?
Yes, I think there are a number of things which are going to be important. As we've heard, especially from the representatives of the European Union and from President Zelensky, a ceasefire is an absolute priority, because that really is needed very urgently to stop the rates of casualties and deaths. Even yesterday, whilst the talks were taking place, there were attacks taking place which led to people dying in Ukraine. And clearly that's a major first step which needs to be secured. So I think that's something that I'm sure everyone is going to really push for. The question of the meeting, I think the question is again going to come to really what is the level of detail about what the agreements may be. It may well be that we'll see some, you might call lower level or mid-level meetings now quite rapidly taking place. I think there's probably going to have to be more detail about what the nature of an agreement would be, as well as really putting into place the question of, well, what will provide security in terms of any agreement, because that is a big question at the moment. I think the level of trust in President Putin's words is very limited, and I think there's a real suspicion that even though agreement may be made verbally or even in writing, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be kept. So there's a lot of conditions which have to be first laid out, and that will then start to bring higher level people together, and potentially representatives of the countries of Putin and Zelensky, and then ultimately Trump as well. But I think that's going to really depend on a real advance in the level of detail about what the discussion is going to be about achieving peace.
Meera Shankar, would you like to reflect on how India is looking at this? Because only yesterday you had the Russian President, Mr. Putin, speak to our Prime Minister, brief him on the discussions that he had with the US. And all of this is happening and taking place in the backdrop of India facing a lot of heat on tariffs with purchases of Russian oil. How would you think India would be looking at what's going on right now?
Well, India would be seeing this as a constructive step towards a peace process. And we've been advocating that for some time, right from the beginning, actually, saying that a solution will not be found on the battlefield and will have to be sought at the negotiating table. So it's a constructive first step in a peace process. Some progress has been made. I think from Putin's side, it means that Russia's isolation to some extent is over. It's political isolation because he visited the United States in Alaska, was given a kind of ceremonial welcome. So Russia and Putin have come out of the cold, if you will. Secondly, I think President Trump has made it clear that he is not insisting on a ceasefire, which Putin has been rejecting, and that peace talks can continue till a peace settlement is reached. So that's a significant gain from the Russian point of view. The Europeans don't like this, but I think they may have to lump it because otherwise the talks won't proceed. I mean, Putin feels he's gaining on the ground, and therefore I think the sooner that these talks proceed, the sooner the fighting might come to an end.
Right.
Thirdly, I think there are still issues, big issues, which remain to be sorted out. And I would say the two main ones would be, the question of loss of territory for Ukraine and security guarantees for Ukraine.
That the European leaders have asked, right? Yes.
Well, it's not the European leaders. It'll have to be part of any agreement because Ukraine will want security guarantees. And Russia, of course, has said that its legitimate security interests must be addressed. And this has been accepted. And that includes no NATO membership for Ukraine. That has been the principal demand of the Russian side. And the second, as Putin says, is, restoration of a fair balance of security in the European sphere and in the world. So this is quoting Putin and what he said. And finally, I suppose, withdrawal of sanctions and reestablishment of normal relations. I think the big issues really will be not the ceasefire or whether talks will continue, but more the question of what territory will Ukraine be prepared to concede and what will be the minimum territory that Russia will be prepared to accept by way of a deal. I think there's considerable ground to be covered there. And what security guarantees for Ukraine will ensure Ukraine's security, but also be acceptable to Russia.
Right.
So I think these are the two big questions which remain to be addressed, but it's a very positive first step. And as far as Indian purchases of oil are concerned, I just want to mention two facts which are important. Firstly, China is the biggest importer of oil from Russia. imported $10 billion more
Right.
than India did in 2024. Secondly, the European Union imported $67 billion
Right.
worth of goods from Russia last year, more than India did. So India is being singled out.
That hypocrisy has been very clear, Ms.
Yes.
Shankar. You're right. The hypocrisy has been very clear. Even though, you've had Peter Navarro urge India to stop buying Russian crude oil, it's very, very clear. But, just stay with me. I just want to bring in Mr. Vikri into this conversation. And taking off from what Ms. Shankar said, Mr. Vikri, there is no ceasefire just yet. Talks will have to take place even as this war is on. Now, Trump has approached the talks with the view that Putin has clearly won the war. He's agreed with Putin and given insistence of a ceasefire first, which God knows when will happen. So far, Putin appears to be calling the shots here. Would you agree, sir?
Well, thanks very much for having me. I'm afraid that your analysis is spot on and correct. Peace, like war, must be waged, and what it requires is one, a strategy, and two, allies to be able to carry out that strategy. Unfortunately, President Trump has shown neither. The meeting in Alaska was a victory for Putin and Russia because he was treated as an equal. There was no mention of his transgression of the UN Charter, the values stated there of non-aggression, non-imperialism, and he came away able to say what his view was, and Trump largely adopted that in regard to a ceasefire. The meeting, which was held yesterday, had really no outcome that includes the United States and pushes forward. But what it did bring about was some sort of coalescence of a coalition of the willing, namely European nations, including Ukraine, realizing that they're going to, one, need to keep U.S. Involved for arms, but on the other hand, knowing that they have to stand on their own 2 feet and be reliant on themselves. It is good that at least people are talking peace. I have to give President Trump that credit, but we have not made progress. It is now time for others, great democracies, I think, including India, the European democracies, Japan, South Korea, Australia, to apply some sort of pressure in regard to Putin. Otherwise, he's going to continue on the path that he's on, and that is one of aggression and just waiting out Trump and the United States until he has controlled this territory, which was his goal all along.
Well, Mr. Taylor, German Chancellor yesterday had said, and allow me to quote him, that this is not just about the territory of Ukraine, it's about political order of Europe. It's completely clear that the whole of Europe should participate. Somewhere down the line, sir, does this suggest Europe is preparing for a deeper, more collective role in shaping any settlement, if at all?
Yeah, I think European countries are genuinely concerned about this, as the former speaker has just highlighted. For example, if Putin was to acquire more territory in Ukraine, that brings his front line closer to many other European countries. And there are many, many countries in Europe where there's a genuine fear of an ever nearer expansionist and aggressive presence of Russia on Europe's borders. And I think this is a real push for many European countries to, think back to World War II, that the relative peace has been enjoyed since then. And there's a real sense that there is a danger for many European countries, as well as, of course, providing support and solidarity with Ukraine. I think one of the things which has been absolutely imperative is to have Ukraine at the negotiating table. And I think this vision, as again we heard from the previous speaker, of seeing President Trump welcome Vladimir Putin with the red carpet rollout treatment in Alaska as a very odd sense of elevating Russia's presence in this whole negotiation. And I think that importance of having Ukraine central to the negotiations with European support as solidarity, as a country which borders and is a neighbor and a close ally of other European countries.
Ms. Shankar, you spoke about ceding territory. How much will Ukraine, be able to cede? But as per the Ukrainian constitution, any change to Ukraine's territory would have to be settled by a referendum in Ukraine. So does this somewhere make territorial concessions to Russia, politically at least, in Ukraine impossible?
I think I won't use words like impossible at this stage, because then you already look at an impasse, very quickly. Yes, there's a huge gulf between the positions of the two principals and their supporters. And that gulf may or may not be bridged. But at this stage, I won't rule it out. I think President Trump, if you recall, has basically said that Ukraine will have to give up Crimea, and that there will be de jure recognition of Crimea as Russian territory. On the other four provinces, I think the Russian position is that they want Ukraine to withdraw from the four provinces, and for those provinces to be also recognized as de jure. And Ukraine's position is that it's not prepared to cede any territory at this stage, including Crimea. So there's a big gulf to be bridged. But that's what the peace process will be about.
Right. Mr. Vikri, to bring you back in, now Trump says a bilateral meeting between Putin and Zelensky will take place first, which can later become a trilateral. All this looks quite far away, at least right now, even though President Trump wants it within the next couple of weeks. It looks implausible, at least as of now.
Well, unfortunately, President Trump has a real estate developer's mentality, and that is if you get the principals in the room, you have a meeting and you resolve whatever the contract question is. That's not the way international relations work. That's not the way in which you wage peace. Already, Moscow and the foreign minister Lavrov have thrown cold water on this idea of having a Zelensky-Putin meeting. It indeed may come about, but it's all a part of the strategy, which is perfectly apparent from anybody who looks at what Putin is doing. It's simply to delay in hopes that there'll be a battlefield breakthrough and that he'll be able to control Ukraine. Lavrov wore a sweatshirt in Alaska, which had the letters USSR in Cyrillic on it. And that's an indication of what the strategy is. It's to put back together the empire, which was first a Russian empire and then inherited by the USSR, which of course includes Ukraine, but it includes a number of other East European nations. So it's time for great democracies like India, and as I say, Europe and others, to look at what can be done to restore the principles and values upon which international peace has been largely kept since World War II. And that is non-aggression, non-imperialism, and being able to go forward with a respect for human rights.
One quick question, Mr. Vikri, before we close this debate. Now, European leaders, have sought security guarantees for Ukraine, very similar to what I believe is Article 5 of the NATO treaty, which would clearly mean any attack on Ukraine will invite retaliation from NATO countries. Today, you have the President of America clarify in an interview that it can't be NATO. Trump has added that US troops won't be stationed in Ukraine. Has he once again thrown Europe under the bus somewhere?
Well, I think that what he's shown is that he has no respect for NATO or Europe. He really doesn't have any respect for anybody except himself and his own aggrandizement. So under the bus would be a metaphor, but I think that what's going on here is that the European nations and India is very much involved in trade and in the exchange of people back and forth. That there are ties with Europe, with the UK, and so all of the world has a stake here. Unfortunately, this approach of Donald Trump, that he's the great man, he's the great real estate developer, he goes in and makes a deal, just does not work. And it's not going to work in this situation either, I fear.
Okay.
But it's much better to be doing talk than war, particularly when you have nuclear armed countries involved.
Fair point, sir. We're going to leave it at that. I appreciate all our three guests for joining us this evening. It's something that we would be discussing in days to come. We'd love to have you back again. But with that, viewers, we've reached the end of the show. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow, but we do leave you with a Get Real India story. And this comes in from Bihar, due for elections in the next month and a half. In Bihar's Katihar district, a bridge built to connect thousands to vital services now stands completely useless for most of the year. Submerged roads, stranded villagers. A 3.68 crore lifeline has become a symbol of neglect. We tell you more in our next Get Real India report. And we leave you with this report, something to think of. Thank you for watching. Have a good night ahead.
This bridge in Bihar, inaugurated in 2019, connects Kodha region to Katihar district headquarters. Built under the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana at a cost of 3.68 crore rupees, it was built as a godsend to the three villages of Devkali, Pekaha and Mushari Dalit Tola. But the bridge, which was meant to be lifeline, has become a showpiece for the villagers. For most part of the year, during floods and rains, the bridge is completely useless. The reason is simple. The approach roads on both sides were built so low that they remained submerged for weeks.
इस तरह से पुल बनी कि दोनों तरफ का अप्रोच पर कोई ध्यान नहीं दिया गया, जिसका नतीजा है कि पानी आते ही हर एक साल दोनों तरफ का अप्रोच में लगभग सीना भर से डूबा पानी रहता है और सरकारी की तरफ से नाव की भी व्यवस्था नहीं रहती है। यानी कि बरसात के सीजन में, बाढ़ के सीजन में इस पुल की कोई उपयोगिता नहीं रहती है।
Around 5,000 people who live in the villages are dependent on the boats to travel to Katihar. The villagers say they take life-threatening risks just to meet their basic needs.
तो हम सरकार से यही मांग करते हैं कि कम से कम एक छोटा स्वास्थ्य केंद्र देवकली में या पेकहा में एगो दे दिया जाए, जो हम सब यदि खाना भी ना मिले तो सांप कीड़ा मकोड़ा से जो है शांतिपूर्वक जी सके।
The bridge today stands tall as a symbol of careless planning and bureaucratic indifference. Bureau Report, India Today.